We're
Okay.
still good.
Well, everybody's got a busy life, and I want to keep this going. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here. I do appreciate your interest in this. This has been somewhat of a big topic for a while, since pretty much July 14th. So we wanted to have this as an opportunity to hear from our people. We've done this before, and it's been a nice forum. But keep in mind, this is your opportunity to talk to us. We're going to take this information back to the Board of Selectmen, so we'll be taking notes on this. There were also several letters that were submitted that were also forwarded on to the Board of Selectmen as well. Before I actually get into the meeting, I just wanted to take a pause and just give a moment because of all the flooding that's happened in the last few days. We had some destruction here in Roxbury, but there was a whole lot more destruction in Woodbury, Southbury, Oxford, Monroe, Seymour. And I just wanted to reflect on that and wish those people the best, because they're going through a lot right now as we look at those pictures that are going on. And I'm thankful very much for our community that we have here and how we pull together. So that being said, I will get into the meeting because your time is valuable just as well. So the reason that this topic has become so active, on July 14th, there was, and I guess I'll call it an over-the-top party at a home on Painter Hill Road that was held at a short-term rental. Hundreds of people arrived, parking all over the lawn and streets with no regard for home or surrounding neighbors. The party continued all night, and most guests leaving between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. in the morning. Trash was left all around the area of Church Street, Painter Hill, Rainy Hill. The police were on scene, but couldn't do much legally as it was private property. To make matters worse, the following weekend, the same group broke into the same house and repeated the party. The property was listed through a company called Evolve, and although the owner had a requirement of a 4-night minimum and a 5-person maximum, the listing company had an exception to rent on booking.com for the evening that the owner was unaware as a 1-night rental. Unfortunately, the information was in small print. The one thing that is something that I was monitoring throughout the night, I'm glad nobody was hurt. But the one thing was frustrating is that we had no way to contact the owner. When I finally reached the owner, he was pretty embarrassed at what had happened. And I truly believe they were victims in the situation by these, I'll just call them opportunists. I also want to state I'm not against a total ban on short-term rentals. That's not the intent to penalize people that have been doing this for a long time in our community. This isn't something that's new, but just to prevent a dangerous situation. So if there is going to be anything, we want to know, what your feelings are. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if I can.
Let me see.
I got it.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Yes. Can you blow it up a
Perfect.
little bit?
I can. I think I can.
There you go.
Too much? Can you read all of it? That better?
That's good.
That's better.
Okay, perfect. So a couple of things that came up in our Board of Selectmen meeting, at the last Board of Selectmen meeting. The purpose, to allow short-term rentals with restrictions in order to ensure the health and safety of residents, property owners of short-term rentals, and renters. We did discuss the difference between what an ordinance is versus a zoning regulation. And an ordinance would be retroactive, where a zoning regulation is only enforceable moving forward. Items that pertain to an ordinance, a permit with a yearly renewal. The permit would include contact information, safety features such as smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, a list of emergency contacts, protocols, renters. And as you go through, there would be possibly a permit fee. It was brought up about should the owner be required to be present? That's something that's come up in other towns, and we have looked at other towns that have looked at some kind of regulation in reference to short-term rentals. None of this has been decided. These are only things that were brought up and that we're talking about. Should we limit permits to only one person or allow multiple properties? off-street parking area, servicing short-term rental property. We have that. That was one of the issues, is the parking on Rainy Hill, Painter Hill, Church Street, and it was somewhat of a traffic jam. They had buses blocking the street. Noise and use restrictions, occupancy limits, and then the enforcement or revocation of the permit due to violation of the ordinance and a reinstatement process. So those are the things that we kind of covered for now. Hopefully stop sharing. And now I get to see you guys again. So those are the things that have come up. Again, nothing's been decided, and nothing will be decided. If there was some type of ordinance change, this ordinance change wouldn't come from the Board of Selectmen. This would be something that we would go to a town meeting and a town vote. So you would have the ultimate say. But where that proposal comes from is hopefully going to come from the input of this group. So thank you very much. We have Selectwoman Kim Tester here on board. Do you want to say anything? Because I mean, I know you kind of, it was all that we talked about, but if you'd like to make an opening statement, feel free.
No, Patrick, you did a great job.
Okay.
I don't really have anything else to add because, we had already discussed it, but yay for you. And I think just to repeat that the townspeople will have the final say on what goes forward. And I've used short-term rentals myself, and I love them, and I find them very useful. And knowing that Roxbury has a long, long history of people coming in and renting, and I'm totally in favor. Thank you.
Absolutely. So this is for you this time. So feel free. If anybody has, I mean, if you'd like, you can raise your hand if you know how to do that, or just raise your hand normally, or just say I want to talk if you can't do that.
You have the there's the icon at the bottom. I think you can.
Yeah, should be under reactions.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Stephen. I see your hand raised.
Yeah.
I'll let you go first.
Okay, well, thank you so much. While I'm not against the idea behind the short-term rental, even New York City has outlawed them because of the issues of pushing people who would otherwise be able to rent out. And they've instituted a 30-day minimum. So I certainly understand the short-term rental, but the inability to control like the real estate investment groups that are basically buying up all of the houses to do this, we're going to lose control of the people who live in the community being concerned about what's happening there. Anyway, thank you so much, and super glad you're doing this.
Absolutely, and thank you for your input. I appreciate your time. Anyone else? Oh, Trevor, how are you? You're next on my screen with a hand.
Howdy. Thanks for having this meeting tonight.
Of course.
Interestingly, Linda, Ray, and I discovered this house I'm living in while we were staying in a short-term rental in Maine 8 years ago. It was a pretty good experience. But this episode that you described, Patrick, with July 14th is something that is happening all across the country, and it describes the worst aspects of short-term rentals. The owner of the house claims, I didn't know. Well, they're not doing their due diligence, which means now that responsibility falls on the town for the cleanup, for paying for police to police that issue with traffic and noise and so on. And, where do we draw the line on that? Because as Stephen just pointed out, there are corporate investors who come in and they destroy communities with these short-term rentals. I'm not completely against the idea. We already live on Hemlock Road. We're surrounded by rental properties. And if there are going to be restrictions in place, they need to be really well considered and enforceable, with very strict consequences for failure to comply with the. And I agree with Stephen. New York City has implemented the 30-day rule, but again, our July 14th landlord, 30-day rule or not, he's not paying or she's not paying attention to the details of the listing. And then some algorithm somewhere slipped something in on the landlord and on the town. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you all come up with. Thanks for your time.
Okay. Thank you very much for the input. And I do have to say, full disclosure, Jim Conway showed up here at Town Hall and he is in my office. Former selectman Jim Conway. So he's present as well. So you could add him to the role. He's just listening in at the moment, just to let you know, Julie. Kathy, Ross.
Oh, thank you, Patrick. So I just had a question about the file that you put up. Let's just imagine a world where all of those things were in effect and then this issue on Painter Hill occurred. So does that mean that the police are now enabled to enter and sort of like, how do you envision, should this situation happen again?
They would have a fine. I think the reason why I brought a lot of this up is the person on Painter Hill bought the house and never lived there. They never were signed up for Code Red or an email. We had no information. So I had to go through the attorney that did their closing. And it took about a week and a half for me to find contact information. And it was after the second party that the state police got the information of the owner. If we had called the owner, they could have stopped it, but we don't know. And I've had plenty of other renters where it's owner occupied or they own multiple homes, and they use this to offset their mortgage or whatever, that have called me like, you should have that as information. We should know. The owner of this property was very nice. He said, yes, I would have stopped it and we could have called the cops and done that. A little bit of the issue is, and this was brought up during the Board of Selectmen meeting, of can our emergency services handle something like that, from, whether there would be, an ambulance called or a fire call, or even the police, in order to take a situation under control of that size. I don't know that we have the resources locally or from the state police in order to do that in an efficient manner. So I think a little bit of that, we're trying to look at every aspect of it. So that's where, when you start to get into it, luckily there was no issue. The second party, there was an ambulance call for a laceration that came through. It's public knowledge. And they left the scene before anyone arrived and the call was canceled. They took off themselves. So, luckily, no one got hurt during this situation, but it is very frustrating when you just can't do anything about it. So.
Right. Okay. Understand. Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay. Aaron Hodge, how are you? You're on mute if you're talking, Aaron.
You might have.
There we go. There we go.
There you go. Okay.
Yes, the ambulance was called to that second scene, and I can tell you that for the size of that scene, the state police staged away from the scene along with the ambulance, and the state police didn't even respond into the scene a second time because they wouldn't even be able to handle that crowd. So I understand that anomaly that happened at 6 Painter Hill is an outlier. I don't think that should overshadow, what the town does, because it is such an outlier. But having someone local, having someone that's able to respond, within 30 minutes, having that on file with the town, is something that's needed. Having it be managed directly by the owner of the property might be another option. I don't think that property in question was managed directly by the owner. It looked, because I put in a complaints through Airbnb and some of the other ones that they're listed under, and it was listed under a management company of some sort. So I think having the owner directly involved and having a local caretaker, which many of the weekend houses have, being a requirement, would be helpful. And unfortunately, because it's on private property, the state police have very little say about what can be done. And that's really the sad part about the situation that took place on Painter Hill.
Great. Great. Thank you very much for your comments. I do have Charlie and Sue Stoffaker on board. You have to unmute. I don't read lips that well, Charlie. Sorry.
There we go. Hi, Charlie Stoffaker. So I'm with the Roxbury Housing Trust, and I'm concerned about the effect of all the rentals on the rental inventory for the town. The people that would benefit from housing trust property are people, I guess, a single person or a couple around low 60,000s, family of 4, low 90,000s. There are not many places for rent in Roxbury that are quote affordable. I just took a quick look on Zillow and Realtor.com this afternoon, and in terms of apartments, there's one bedroom for $2,200 a month, one 3-bedroom for $5,000 a month, and in Realtor.com there was a $2,700 a month house. I asked for apartments there, but I got $5,000 a month, $7,500 a month, almost $11,000 a month. Those are all houses. I think one thing that needs to be considered is the difference between apartments, which have mostly been, I think, and certainly the town has information to determine this, developed as accessory uses on people's properties. And I can see why people want to do this to make some extra money, but it is, unless there's some requirement. I know in Washington, I think it's Washington, one accessory use can be rented at any rate, and if they want a second accessory apartment rented, it has to be dedicated to affordable housing. And I think one thing is people having a home. In that case, I would certainly favor owner occupied. I don't think it's appropriate to have in town people that own multiple homes or look in this like running a chain of hotels or something. They're not on the properties, maybe not on any property. I think the residency is important. But overall, from my concern about affordable housing, I think we need to look at what these short-term rentals are doing to the impact of affordable rentals in town. Thank you.
Okay. I will say, because I have heard from people of concern and some of their comments, they use that short-term rental because they also occupy the house during certain times. They may go to another place that they have and they use it to offset their mortgage. So not all of them are always full-time, or they want an accessory unit so they can have their family, but then they also want to offset it as well. So those are some of the comments that have come in, just for the record. So that's definitely come up also. All right. Well, thank you very much, Charlie and Sue. Anyone else? This is your time. Thank you for being here. I know you want to hear, but I also want to hear your input.
Howie has his hand
Hey,
up.
Howie, I see that. I see Howie struggling. There you go, Kathy.
You should be able to go to the lower left and unmute.
There we
Okay.
There you go.
All right. I think what Aaron is talking about, maybe did too, is that having contact information and possibly a rep, or if it's a company who's renting it for them, they need to have a rep nearby who's you can contact. It's not like New York City or wherever they might be. And then you could at least have someone who could show up and take care of things. As far as the noise and stuff, some people have weddings in their backyards or receptions in their backyards, and they tend to be a little noisy, but they're a little more controlled usually. I wouldn't want to push those out of town. And I think I've never used an Airbnb, but everybody says, "Oh, you should try one. It's a lot nicer than a hotel in certain areas." And certainly, sometimes that might be a nice choice for people to be in the area. But it certainly did get. I mean, they were right across the street from us, and it was sort of intriguing. The the show there was like having Bridgewater Fair in your backyard.
You were right there. I know, you saw it all.
So, and all the cars driving up is like, whoa, what is going on here? So,
Yeah. And I will say again, full disclosure, I had before being elected to this office, I had a pretty good 50th birthday party right in downtown, and I had a police officer on duty the whole time. I had people that were valets to run cars, and it was under control. So I mean, again, I don't want people to limit anybody's ability to have a party and do their thing. It's just, I think it's more the control thing. So definitely the registered and someone nearby. I got your comments, Howie. So thank you. Appreciate
but
it.
just so that we have an ability to contact someone when it gets something that's out of hand. So I think that's it. We'll let someone else speak.
No, absolutely. And I think that's why I had stated that was the most frustrating part for me, is I had no idea who these people were. So Pals, thank you for joining. Oh, you're on mute too. We're gonna there you
Can
go.
you hear me?
I
Okay.
can hear you now.
Got it. So thanks for having me. This is obviously a subject that is part of my profession every day, both here in Roxbury and around the area. And as you mentioned, different towns are taking different approaches. It is both a conversation about new forms of sort of home ownership and economic vitality and visitors and the such. It is also a conversation about what is it we want as a community in terms of transient residents, in terms of, why is it we regulate bed and breakfast to death, but we think Airbnb can happen anywhere, right? That to me seems somewhat unfair. And bed and breakfast are a zoning issue. We're trying to say maybe short-term rentals would be an ordinance issue. Okay, I'm not making a value judgment. I'm just saying we need to recognize that we're sort of treating two different groups differently. And I'm not sure that's fair or consistent. The other issue, I think, is around enforceability. If you look at Sherman, for example, which has banned short 30-day or under rentals for a couple years now, it's like whack-a-mole for them. They do fine homeowners. Again, I'm not sure about the protocols for enforcement, but I think it's challenging. Especially if you have, what I call non-owner occupied professional rentals. I mean, these are effectively businesses in commercial zones, in residential zones, right? It's not like somebody's buying a house, living there 3 months, renting it for 3 months, and then using it sporadically for the other 6 months. You have buyers who buy properties who never live there, who just rent them out as a business. And, what does that mean? I guess in times when there's no housing liquidity and people need to sell houses, that's good. But in times when we need housing and, I'm not saying they're buying affordable housing out from underneath our community, not that there is any really. But even if they're buying $600,000 or $700,000 houses, those are low priced range houses for our market. And what does that say about what we want in our communities? And I see lots of different towns take lots of different approaches, and I think it's worth understanding, all the implications, the benefits, the negatives, all those things. And, I know there are benefits to having visitors here. They go to Maplebank Farm, they go to the market, they hike in the land trust, and eventually some of them buy houses. Not all of them do. And certainly some bad actors ruin it for everybody else, a la what happened on my street. But I do think we need to think about a sort of holistic approach to this. That sort of is my 2 cents on this.
I appreciate that. And we have not gotten to the part of how enforcement is going to look. And I know there's a lot of struggles with that, just from seeing what other towns go through. I do appreciate your input, Pels. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Deidre Daly is next on my hand up, and then Chris Haggerty. So Deidre, how are you tonight?
Hello all. So I'm not adverse to people having rentals. I understand people rent places in their home, almost like as an in-law apartment. Some people have little cottages that they rent. But when you're talking about something where it's a large home that can bring in the element that came into our town, I think it should be concerning. And just as concerning as everybody was about that car show being at the park. When you're running a business like that, you're not running something for a couple, maybe a single person or someone with a couple of kids, and they're renting a small place. When you have a property like that, you're inviting the parties that we witnessed. Any other large home that is available for short-term rentals like that, they stipulate the size of the parties. There are rules, and there is always a designated agent who is you're supposed to check in with them, and they have the right to be on property. Most of these properties also have cameras. Usually they'll tell you up to 3 cameras, and it's typically in the front, the back, and the side. I think any business that could potentially cost Roxbury money, because we're all paying for it, they should have to give you a certificate of insurance that names the town on it, and also probably give it to the services. Us as taxpayers should not be responsible for anyone who's running a business and they're not paying attention to it. I don't want people like that in Roxbury. I'm sorry. I read the comments and some of those people were packing. Not what we should allow, hands down. And these homeowners who are not present and are just making money off of Roxbury, they should be held responsible, and they need to be told at the get-go, we need your name, number, these are the rules. If you're going to rent it out, you need an agent or whatever we decide. We need a certificate of insurance and state the value and tap into it. And maybe also require them to have a deposit for certain size parties that will be held, because it's not fair to the residents to clean up after this. It's my piece.
Great input, Deidre. Thank you. Very well said. And I will say that I would not clean up and this came up in the Board of Selectmen, I would not clean up that yard, but I did clean up the street that morning because I didn't want it to be an embarrassment for our town.
On mute, not on mute.
I take pride
I
in it.
could speak.
What's his name?
So,
Patrick.
oh, Brian, you're not on mute, so we hear your
That's
conversation.
That's what I thought.
But
I apologize, Patrick. Are we allowed to speak, or do we have to be on a list?
You are. Chris Haggerty has the floor next, so I can call on you next, though, Brian. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Chris, you have the floor.
Thanks, Patrick. Just curious. I mean, at that event, what was the reasoning the state police couldn't break that up at all, and what kind of wording in a ordinance would allow them to do that in the future?
Well, I don't want to just narrow it down to this situation. I think the whole situation brings up something else, but they were on private property. So you do have rights on your own property. It just is. I can't tell you to close it down unless there's something going on. We don't have a noise ordinance in town to speak of, so there was very little that I could react to if nobody was doing anything illegal at the moment.
And
So what would need to be in
It
an
was just a
ordinance
very
to-
loud party. And then you have to decide, well, is it the party or is it the rental? And then how much do you go on these limitations? I think part of the big part of them is they had no vested interest in this town. It was all these, these people that came through and go ahead, Kim, sorry.
I think, isn't it true that the homeowner has to state, it can call the police?
He could have.
Yeah.
He could have.
He had the right to do that, and then the police could have reacted.
Correct.
But we didn't have any information on the homeowner.
Okay. What can we put in an ordinance that would then allow that kind of a party to be broken up if we weren't able to get in touch with the owner?
Well, the thing that we have right at the moment is to not allow them. As there's a draft ordinance that I was playing with and looking at other towns. And
Not allow parties or allow rentals?
Not allow parties. And
what
then
if someone has a wedding at their house, though?
The draft that I have doesn't allow them.
On short-term rentals.
On short-term rentals, a one-nighter, under 29 days.
We could, so there could be, and I'm just throwing things out here.
Yeah.
Just from limits of volume of people,
Right.
parking restrictions, no on-street parking. There are things that we could do to, from an ordinance level, that could control that if we decide to do so.
Right.
But you would literally be monitoring, the symptoms of what that is at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
It's complicated. I can't lie. Okay, Brian, are you back?
I am back.
Go for it.
I apologize. I missed the first meeting and I actually just signed on now because I got back from the office. I don't know if everyone knows us or not, but we have been Airbnb-ing our Roxbury house for about 5 years. And we live in it and we Airbnb in it. And we've been very successful at it. And it's been a lot of fun. We only do it through Airbnb and Vrbo, 80% Vrbo, 20% Airbnb. We never do it privately because both Airbnb and Vrbo offer incredible insurance. And I also meet every guest that comes in and gives them a walkthrough and check them out and make sure that they are legit. I'm totally against the concept of having wild and crazy parties. I do know I'm friendly with about at least 30 people in Roxbury that either Airbnb and Vrbo rooms in their house or their entire houses. And I think it's very rewarding for the community and does a lot for the community in terms of local businesses, in terms of helping people in Roxbury make additional income so we could stay in Roxbury, not be forced to move. And I'm totally against the concept of having huge parties like just occurred, but that was
Airbnb.
So is Airbnb and Vrbo are both complete. You're not allowed to have a large party. The people rent the house and they say they're having 2, 3, 4. They specifically have to say how many guests they're having, their age, whether they're adults, whether they're kids, and if there's any big party, you're immediately uninsured on Vrbo or Airbnb. I don't know if everyone knows that.
So you missed the first part of this. They did, the owner did use a third party, and they did have a stipulation that they could rent it out per the night on booking.com. That's how this party had happened. And the owner didn't know about that when they had signed up for this company.
I mean, just alone, as we all know, we have well water in Roxbury, and if you have 20 people come to your house, you run out, your well runs dry.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't work. And so,
I mean, also, we do weddings through our event production company and parties, etc. Whenever you have a tent or a generator, you immediately have to go apply for a permit. So the town would know. There is a party here, you know, it is a wedding, or maybe it's a 70th birthday party, 50th birthday party, whatever it is, and they're putting a tent up, and they have to give specifics. So
at the same time, we have never done that, and
no, we haven't, but
don't really have an interest in doing that. But
no,
I'm just trying to represent the people in Roxbury that successfully do Airbnb and Verbo their houses, and it kind of increased the real estate value, I think, in Roxbury, because we all see that our houses are beautiful, and it helps us stay in Roxbury, and it kind of goes with the Roxbury feel of having your own business in your house, which we did for 25 years. I just was trying to, and we're clearly against the concept of having more than 20 people coming to your house is some type of private party, and unless you're doing it for your own, you know, for a 50, 60, 70, 80 birthday party, you know, I don't think that people should be able to have commercial parties in Roxbury. That's ridiculous.
right. And I think what just happened is obviously not the normal scenario. It's a complete exception.
Well, no.
For now.
There are companies that specialize in that, but as a Roxburian, we need to see that that doesn't come to Roxbury. It doesn't go with what Roxbury is about.
Okay. I guess the question is, how do you do that?
Easy. And then I thought Roxbury has an ordinance that after 10 o'clock, you're not allowed to make any noise, or am I wrong?
We don't have a noise ordinance. We somewhat fall under the state, but it's not very enforceable. It goes through deep.
Right.
So there's not much we can do.
I mean,
and that'd be a whole nother discussion.
It seems as if everyone is in kind of an agreement with the basic premise that we're not interested in our community, but to become party central. That, you know, that's what clubs are for. That's what Woodbury's for.
Or Hartford.
Or
Woodbury may disagree.
Yeah, you're right. But you know, well, for restaurants, Woodbury's turning into that.
Understood.
And we kind of all enjoy that. So,
gotcha.
Wait. Woodbury is being represented at this thing, and we're dealing with it also, the ZBA, and we just had a recent case. So no. We don't want you to transfer Party Central over to Woodbury. Thank you very much.
I saw you on there, Jane. I was waiting for you to chime in. Next time, use a different town, Brian.
I apologize.
Yeah, let's go move it further away. Let's call it, Hartford.
Jane, I don't know if you realize, but our company, Big Wave Events, our warehouse is at 126 South Pomperaug.
Okay.
In Woodbury.
And we have enough equipment there to have a party for 50,000 people, and we just do it at universities.
Well, that's good. That's a good place. But we are dealing with this, but it isn't just towns and cities. I mean, New York jumped on it right away. It's all over the world right now. Small rural spaces in Europe are being destroyed by Airbnb and VRBO. What, Spain is now water gunning people go home. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. So it's a big problem everywhere.
It's a complicated problem as well. Deidre has her hand back up.
I just wanted to mention that we limited the distillery because residents didn't want them to have too many parties. And whether they had a bridal shower or they had an event, I forget how many they were allowed a year, but in my opinion, for a business in our town, they were really strangled to it. I don't know how they could stay in business with the requirement that we gave them. These are private properties. I think when we're making the regulation or the ordinance for them, we should keep that in mind, because the commercial businesses should be allowed to have more parties, large parties, than these private rental properties. It's not fair that they could follow the rules, give you insurance, whatever it is, do the permits, and they could have it every weekend or once a month, when our own businesses who invested in our town, who we know and we want there, cannot do the same thing. So I'd like to make sure that we take that into consideration.
Valid point.
I don't think private residences should be able to have any type of party other than if your immediate relative wants to have a wedding at your house. You know, that obviously should be permitted. But a private residence where you have neighbors should not be permitted to have, you know, loud, raucous parties. That's not. We're a private community.
Paula, you have your hand up, but you could just unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I think the onus has to be on the property owner, not on the town, not on Airbnb or VRBO. It's on the property owner because there are so many variables. One thing is consistent is the property owner. So I think that the town, I think we have to put the weight of the responsibility again on the property owner for insurance, for fees. They would be the one that would be responsible for, oh, what if it's an LLC? How do you have a contact with an LLC? It's a business concern, not an individual. And then the traction. I think there could be fines that could be levied on even people who, the property owners, if it's unbeknownst to them that this big party is happening at their house, again, they're not doing their due diligence. Like, Trevor had said, they should have known that, and they didn't. They were asleep at the wheel. So I think it took them by surprise. I think it took the whole town by surprise, but ultimately the burden is on the property owner. And that's who gets fined, and that's who should have, perhaps, first of all, every short-term rental, whether it's Airbnb or through an agency or, whatever, should be registered with the town and maybe a permit that they pay a fee. It should be, and by having the permit, maybe that could include insurance, contact information, and then a secondary contact if the owner is not available. But enforcement is another thing. Again, the property owner, we could have levels of fines. I don't know, like 1 warning, 2 warnings, I don't know, but I think it really has to be, the burden has to be on the property owner and not the town. That's my sense of it. And then what do you do in the case of an LLC? And it's a corporation that owns it instead of an individual, so yeah.
And there are a lot of those. There's a lot of owners, we don't know who they are.
Yeah.
We
But I
know
think-
quite a few of our own friends that to protect their assets, they throw it
Right.
into an LLC, and we may
Right.
not know who they are. We don't have phone numbers for every single person. We have a great network,
But
but not nearly everyone.
I think that everybody should put their heads together and come up with every short-term rental in whatever capacity in town, and send them a registered letter or whatever to inform them. Once, if in fact we do a permitting process and a fee, they should be notified legally that, and if they don't respond or they ignore it, then they're fined. So it's not just to protect the neighbors, like I think, Kathy and Howie and all the cars, but to protect the homeowner too, to protect the person who owns the property. This is also the motivation behind this too. We're protecting them too, and the town. So I think that's important to make that clear, that we're doing this for everybody involved, for health and safety, and the health and safety of the first responders. That's really important. if you have to get an ambulance in there or a fire truck, and there's 250, 300 people, wall-to-wall people inside and out, and they're on the roof. So, I mean, this is a huge thing. So I think a permitting process with a fee would be appropriate. Anyway, I'm done.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you for the
Thank you.
feedback. The next person up for me was Trevor.
Thank you, Patrick. Thanks, Paula. That was awesome. Just wanted to throw in the phrase surety bond. I'm not sure if that's anything that could be legally applied here, but if we're going to create regulations for the registration of the short-term rentals with permits required and a fee required, what about a surety bond that, my concern is as we see out in the corporate world, the federal government comes in, they win a lawsuit against a giant corporation. Corporation gets a $1 million fine, and they don't even blink. So especially with the kind of money that must have been involved with this Painter Hill event, I'm not talking about the local folks who rent out the room in their house with big money, but if it's an LLC, if it's a corporate investor, and the fine is $300, I mean, they'll be laughing at us. So maybe a surety bond and a higher level of fines would, especially a surety bond, because I'm in the money world. You put your money where your mouth is. Money talks. And if somebody has to put up a serious amount of money as a surety bond and potentially jeopardize losing their permit, and I noticed on the agenda, Patrick, what you folks have is the possibility of losing the permit and a reinstatement. I think this is the kind of thing, as Jane said, this is going on all over the world. It's Barcelona, by the way, where they're chasing tourists out of the city, which is really annoying because Linda and I want to go to Barcelona, so I guess we're not going there. But if there's serious money required, that homeowner in this case who dropped the ball, who did not do his due diligence on this, didn't even have the respect for our town to go to town hall and go, hey, how you doing? I bought a house. I'm going to do short-term rentals. What are the issues? What are the regular? This schmuck didn't even ask town, guaranteed, never inquired what our regulations are. So in the event that this is going to be a thing here in town, Mark mentioned this 30 odd homeowners. That's mind blowing to me how many people have short-term rentals in a town where we can't provide affordable housing for the kids who grew up here or for the seniors who can't afford the maintenance or the property taxes on their long-standing homes. And we've got all these short-term rentals. I come from the real estate trade, and that kind of thing blows my mind. But I'm rambling on here. I'm going to shut up. Surety bond, if that's something that can be included, make them put some skin in the game, put their money where their mouth is, and let them know no ifs, ands, or buts. One strike and you're out. Thanks.
Okay. Not sure how we're going to word that, but Chris Cody is next. Chris Cody. Could be John Cody. Okay, I'll come back to you if you can unmute and you want to talk. Tova Martin is also up. Tova? Hey, Ralph, next door. Do you want to go knock on her door?
I could probably speak on what she was going to speak about. I'm thinking about it, but we should allow her time to get on.
Okay, so either Chris or John Cody or Tova Martin. Does anyone else have any other comments while we're waiting?
What Tova might be wanting to speak about is, and I think this might have been before you came on board, Patrick. And first of all, good evening to everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Thank you for joining. We live on, it's just, I thought that was Tova. We live on the pond, and someone purchased a house across from us probably 5 or 6 years ago. I think it was before the vid hit, but they started, same thing. You know, someone comes to town, doesn't check with anybody, and just does what they want. And they actually got in trouble for zoning issues and such. But they started renting their property out, and they had a number of parties there. The police showed up for both of them. There were parking issues on 67, very dangerous. And the police were asked to leave both times because it was private property. No, the owner said he had nothing to do with it. You had to go through the rental company. There was no one with the rental company that could handle things, I guess. And then both times after the police showed up, they turned the music up and you started hearing the F-bomb. And they essentially were like, well, if you don't like us, we don't like you. And those were the only two experiences that I've had in this area. But I think that's what Tova might have spoken about. It was very difficult to do anything, if at all. And if it wasn't a short-term rental, bottom line, it would have never happened. So once you open the door, reality hits. You can have any law you want in place, but if the owner's not there, someone spoke tonight who's an owner and he invites the people into his home, that's great. He gets to see who they are and the people know that person's there. I think that's great. But if you have a short-term rental like a home and the owner's not there, think of the hotels that say no smoking. People go in and smoke in the room. They don't care. They do what they want to do. And it's the same thing in a lot of cases with these short-term rentals. And then everyone's having a meeting again. Well, look what happened up on, this road, and look what happened on that road. So just bear in mind, when you have something like this, reality is always going to come into play, no matter what rules you have in place.
Good point. Thank you. I still have Cody and Martin. And I have Brian holding up his finger. And I have Jane Don holding up her hand. Okay, we're going to go to Brian because he had the finger up first. I still haven't heard from Cody or Martin. You got to unmute, though, if you're going to talk, Brian. He's talking. You got to unmute.
Here we go. I once again, I think that Roxbury is not designed to be party central. And unless you're having a private party on your property, you should not be renting your property out for parties. Because it interferes with your neighbors, it interferes with parking, it interferes with police. I think it's wrong. And I think possibly, even though it might be wrong, I know that if you're just working with Verbo and Airbnb, it's against the guidelines and rules of Airbnb and Verbo. That's why they're so successful. And then maybe you should, if someone wants to rent their house on a short-term basis, they should be required to go through Airbnb and Verbo, because you have all the insurance and it just takes care of all the fine print. Secondly, and I brought this up with Barbara a couple of years ago, anyone who Airbnbs and Verbos in our town gets charged the hotel tax, which I believe is either 15 or 18%. And it's really unfair that the state of Connecticut is taking all the money and Roxbury doesn't get any. I know no
actually, if you're using it for a rental that's furnished, your contents are you pay property tax on the contents.
Yeah, but when if there's a lot of people that are making a lot of money through Airbnb and Verbo, and the state is getting, I believe, 18%, and Roxbury is not getting any of it.
Understood.
I don't know if you're aware of that, but if you look at your, at the end of the year, you get your Airbnb and Verbo statement, and the states, I believe they're getting 18%, and Roxbury doesn't get a penny. And that's
valid
wrong.
point.
Tova's on.
Tova's on.
Tova's on, yes.
I finally unmuted. So sorry about that. I just couldn't get it to unmute. But what I wanted to say is what I wanted to speak into really is about the sense of community and the importance of that, and having people come that have no sense of community. And we, Ralph's my neighbor, we live in a more compacted part of this town. There's not that much space between us, and we are more affected perhaps when something like this happens. So, you know, I just want I guess I want things to happen where people have more respect for our community and really think about it. So I'd also love to know a little bit more about other towns and their solutions for this. I mean, local towns, not so much Barcelona, but local towns and what their solutions are for this sort of thing, because as you said, it seems to go the gamut, and I'd love to know, you know, what you've set forth here is sort of very permissive, and maybe we need to go, you know, give a little, take a little, because when a very bad situation happens, the cow is pretty much out of the barn. I mean, the situation has happened, and it's what you do as far as fines, etc. There's still that you know, the situation that happened, and the I guess the lack of the bad results for the community. So that's just what I wanted to say.
Thank you very much, Tova. Kathy Rozigan.
Oh, thanks, Patrick. I just had one other comment, which is just that, you know, I don't think Airbnb is a bad guy. And I just wonder if, in fact, they could provide guidance. And, you know, they don't want these parties either, right? This doesn't reflect well on them. So I just wonder, you know, given that they are global and this is happening all over, I just wonder if they're a resource in creating the solution.
Great point. Great point. We've looked at other towns. To be honest, I haven't reached out to Airbnb, but we can definitely do so. I wrote that down. That's a very good takeaway.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Oh, Howie's back, I think.
Push. Yep, I'm back.
Hey, you're getting good at this now.
Yeah.
You're going to be a pro. Go ahead.
No, I'm gonna go back out and hold my garden instead. So not gonna practice this too much. All this conversation we're following, I was wondering if the owner occupied or owner lives in town or even maybe in the next town. If you made that a requirement, how many people would it affect, like Brian in town or anybody else? If you made that requirement, then you wouldn't have these corporations buying houses just to be party houses or rental houses. And then so if you propose that, how many people in town would be like, oh my God, I need to rent my house? Maybe they have to be in their house so many months a year. They might go to Florida for the winter and they find someone who can rent their house and their house is occupied and it's not free, you know, if someone's there in case the pipes break or something. And then if you're really like sort of stepping on someone's rights, you would find out if you propose that possibly.
Okay.
Well, that was part of the discussion at the beginning is, you know, what length is a short term? Is it under 21 days? Is it 30? And there's a lot of different definitions of what that is based on the town. So that'd be something that would be up for discussion as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of down by the shore. There's a lot of cottages that are rented week by week. People, they've been doing it for years, and it doesn't seem. I know down in Madison it was fine till somebody decided it'd be a good place for a graduation party, and it was kind of the same kind of thing as across the street here. Maybe not quite as big, but it was kind of big, and it's a very tight neighborhood, and they they were like, that's not a good idea here.
Mhm.
But
I would hate to see the town have that much more responsibility. We can lean. There are some things that have to be worked out, but boy, I appreciate all the people that work in our town in the in different parts of their responsibilities. I would be very careful about adding more of it. Anyway.
And that's again, that's a tough thing too. How is this going to be enforced? You know, I don't think anybody really wants, you know, their $1 million house to be trashed. I can't imagine that any owner, you know, whether it's a corporate or anybody, wants to see that. And you know how I only knew of this one situation, you know, in my tenure. How long ago, Ralph, if you don't mind me asking you, was that other party that was a problem? Do you remember?
You're on mute.
Yeah.
You're on, yeah. You have to.
That is the best.
It is.
Settlement conviction. I mean, just.
Okay, finished.
Are you there?
Oops.
Oh, okay. We're not going to get this.
Happy birthday, Patrick. There we go.
Thank you very much.
Can I just add one thing? Whoops,
Go ahead,
am I
Jane.
muted? Yeah.
Yep, you're good.
We we had two lawyers, the town lawyer and the people whose rental we were discussing. The planning commission had put in a cease and desist order. So their lawyer said, just so we knew, that there is a case from Branford in the state Supreme Court about rentals, and Howie's example was perfect. This Branford case was a man who'd rented his house out for years on the shore, and now all of a sudden there was all this problem with the community around him. But the interesting thing that he said, and you've got much to do, and I just wanted to put it out there, is we now know, we agreed with the planning commission, we now know we are going to be facing court. This Woodbury is. And this lawyer was very, very clever, because he kept saying, you know, it's going to cost you a lot of money. You better wait till the state court comes down and see how it comes out, because he was playing on Woodbury's well-known risk averse doing anything. So I thought that was very clever. So I just think no matter what you do or what ordinances we try to put in, there's going to be pushback.
Absolutely.
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 So, and I'm sorry to intrude, but I think so many towns, he brought up Avon, which has been very successful with their rules. You know, we talked about the man in, I think it was Greenwich or Westport, who people came right into his garage and stole his car. And we thought it was going to a chop shop, but the chop shop was in Bristol, I think, and it was a VRBO. So
it was in Berlin, actually.
Berlin, thank you. I knew it was a B word. Thank you, Patrick. Definitely knew it was a B word, but that was being run as a business. And so I just wanted to bring out the fact that no matter how many towns are so, you know, wanting to do preventive things, you do have to know that there's definitely going to be pushback. So,
of course,
thanks for your input, Jane. I'm going to bring this to my committee.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. You know, we've run this forum kind of thing before, and it's a good way to get people's opinions out there and hear everybody else's voice. So,
right.
I do appreciate everybody being here. I see Ralph Westcott.
Yeah, we had technical difficulty for some reason, but
That's
I
okay.
heard the questions, and I wanted to be short, so in case other people wanted to know.
Yeah.
Tova can chirp in, but I think the parties, they were at the beginning of a summer and the end of a summer, and I think it was at least 2 years ago. In both cases, the state police were called. And in both cases, there was multiple cars parked on 67. There's no place to park on 67.
Mm-hmm.
And the same owner still owns the house. I don't know if he rents it out short term anymore. If he does, haven't heard anything, or they're pretty low key, whoever comes in there. But he was definitely renting it out for party venues.
Okay.
And I know the Schoenholzes, who live right at the bottom of the hill, I think they called the state police. A number of people did, because it just, something was going on there. And then, like I said, after the police left, it got a little bit more rowdier because they were upset that somebody called the state police on their party.
Got it.
But that was, like I said, right before you came on board.
Okay. I have Brian holding up a finger.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
There you go.
Why don't we form a committee of 6 or 7 people, have 2 or 3 meetings, come up with a guideline, a definitive guideline, and present it to the town and vote it in, and have it, be protective of the town, have it be protective of people in the town and of the homes. Because it sounds like pretty much everyone is in some level of agreement, and we just need to have it organized.
Great feedback. I wrote that down too. Thank you. Kim, you don't have to raise your hand. You're a select woman, Kim.
And with that, unfortunately,
you're doing this with me, Kim. Thank you, Brian.
I just want to interrupt. Before this was brought to the Board of Selectmen, actually, probably just when we got into office, I had presented at 2 or 3 meetings regulation possibilities for short-term rentals. And, we ended up tabling it. I've done a lot of research, looked at Groton, and for this, after this last event, I looked at ordinances at Bosra, Simsbury, Stonington, and came up with a draft that included a lot of the things that are talked about tonight. So we've already sent something to the town attorney for her opinion as well, because she has done a lot of this work. The discussion with people speaking at our last BOS meeting and then tonight is to kind of reaffirm some of the things that we already have listed, and also at the meeting, at our last Board of Selectmen meeting, the whole discussion as came up tonight about emergency services and how to protect them and how to really deal with the police and what our responsibility is, or what we are able to do in the heat of the moment, when something is underway, and those are really important questions. But I think, we do have, and that's partially what that list was that Patrick showed, was a kind of a beginning of talking points for tonight. But we have quite a bit written and that we'd like to present at some point soon to the town. And that might be something, Patrick, we can talk about how to get something out before a town meeting so that people can see what our ordinance looks like, because it actually has to be written in a particular way that is going to be enforceable. So there's some lawyer speak in there too. And that's, I think, an important point. And it fits a format that we have. If you look at the code of ordinances that is listed on the website, there's a pattern there. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other hands up. Obviously, this is a discussion that is going to continue. We will report back at the next Board of Selectmen meeting, but no decisions are going to be made, and you will be well informed before we go to a vote. That I can assure you. And I really do appreciate the letters, the phone calls, everybody that's reached out. It's because you care about this town just like we do, and for that I thank you. We have a special place here, and everybody wants to protect it. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your input. And we definitely value what you have to say. So unless there's anything else, I'd like to close the meeting.
Thank you for everybody for being on the call. Good stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you,
really
guys.
wonderful.
And as long as you guys like this format,
Yeah.
because I did it on Zoom tonight because at the Board of Selectmen, somebody brought a baby. And I was like, everybody, you don't have to bring your baby along. I mean, you had to, but they were so interested in this conversation. And this way you get to sit, other than me, you get to sit, and Jim Conway, get to sit in the comfort of your own home. And I think it's a nice way to have an open discussion, and you guys are very diplomatic about it. Everybody's very, very great on this call. So, and look at Brian with his martini.
Exactly.
I know where I'm going after this.
Excuse me,
right.
Patrick.
Yes.
Oh, there
The
she is.
Codys have been having trouble joining and they just rejoined. So Chris
Who
has her
did?
hand up.
Oh,
Chris
okay. I see
Cody.
that.
Yeah, they've
Yeah,
been
go
having
ahead.
a lot of trouble.
We're still here, so help yourself.
Yeah.
Hey, Patrick, I'm so sorry. I don't know, my mic was blocked, so I couldn't get on.
No problem.
I just had a quick question. So if people are renting their homes out, regardless of what channel they use, would this be considered a home enterprise, and should they not be submitting an application for that to the town?
Good point.
That's a great point.
It's a very good.
I think everybody had a good look on their face.
Wow. Boom.
That's a good one.
Mic drop.
No, actually, I need to say that. All right, so I'm on zoning. Okay. The reason why, and there's a lot of lawyer talk between the difference between going through zoning, which would be the home enterprise consideration, and ordinance, is that zoning only goes from the date that the regulation has been established forward, and nothing would be grandfathered. So anything in existence prior wouldn't be touched by that regulation.
But
So
but the home enterprise
ordinance.
the home enterprise thing is not a new thing. That's been in existence, right?
Right. I don't, you're sitting there.
That's a great question. That's a great question.
That would be.
You're going to lose sleep over that tonight.
Yeah, there we go. That's
Sorry about
things
that.
to keep me up at night.
Yeah, exactly. But that is something,
Good point.
why ordinance is the thing that towns are going for, because of it's retroactive and it catches everybody.
That would be a question for the town's attorney, maybe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, but I can assure you, no decisions are going to be made
No.
quickly on this. We have a long way to go. But once again, you guys are great. Thank you very, very much. Unless there's anything else, I'm going to end this. And I hope next time we have a topic, I get just as many people, because this has been great. We've done this for the cannabis discussion, and because of that discussion, it's not allowed in parks or anything else. And we never would have got that information if it wasn't for the input from the town. And we continue to do this, and I will continue to do this. And I love hearing your voice. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Have
you.
a wonderful night,
Thanks,
everyone.
Patrick.
We'll talk
Thank you
soon.
Bye.
All right. Take care.